Hey guys, today I'll be talking to you about the minimum wage fallacy. So there's been a lot of talk in the news about the minimum wage and having it increased to $15 per hour in the US, same in the UK, and in Poland where I am right now, the minimum wage currently is going to be increased by 10% starting January next year, 2020. Right, so what is the minimum wage? A minimum wage is the minimum legally allowed amount to be paid to an employee by an employer. I always mess this up. Anyway, so what's the premise behind this? What's the main reason behind having the minimum wage and increasing it? Well, the main argument behind this is the fact that it helps, or it's supposed to help, the income for lower earners. It's meant to increase the income for lower earners. A second point is the idea of a living wage. So living and minimum wages aren't always the same. Some people say they should be, but it's not always the same. So some people say that the minimum wage should be the living wage on which people can have satisfactory living standards. Again, it's very subjective because what are satisfactory living standards? It depends from one person to another. You know, for example, the economic right believe in a low minimum wage, and the economic left believe in a high minimum wage, which should satisfy a lot of kind of basic necessities, or just kind of a lot of living standards for the people on minimum wage or around that area. Right, so why do we need a minimum wage? For some people, it kind of leads back onto the other point. It's the idea of having satisfactory living standards and allowing people to get by on a minimum wage, whether it's from when they're going from one job to another, or they're entering a job to earn some experience and develop their skills. It's about providing them with essentially a wage that they can just about live on or get by. Again, this is a gray area. There's a lot of debate on this, but that's kind of something that many people can agree on. Inflation. Second point is inflation and having the change in minimum wage be similar to that of inflation. So let's say if the price increased 2%, there's an inflation of 2%, the minimum wage, some people say, should be increased by 2%, so that it doesn't lose any real value, because obviously, as we know, as inflation and prices go up, the purchasing power of one unit currency, so $1, £1, one Polish zloty, goes down essentially. And the third point is an election sausage. It's a Polish saying. Essentially, an election sausage is something that a politician will throw you to obviously gain some votes. So, for example, the Democratic leaders, most notably in the US, have been saying that there should be a strong $15 per hour minimum wage. And really, when you ask them about where the number comes from, it'll be hard for them to give a proper kind of, I don't want to say non-educated, but very unsubstantiated answer. And that's an example of normative economics in comparison to positive economics. Positive economics looks at the data how it is now, a lot of objective data and a lot of kind of statistics involved in it. Normative economics is by definition something, I say it should be like this. It's based on opinion, and policies use a bit of both. So really, an election sausage is, again, it's another way of saying kind of normative economics. It's a way to gather votes for people. Right, so I'll take the UK minimum wage as an example, and let's say, it's right now £8.21 gross. I don't exactly know how much they want to increase it to, or, I mean, there's a lot of numbers flying about, but that's kind of part of the problem, really, part of the fallacy. So let's say if you're working at minimum wage in the UK, gross value of £8.21, that's pre-tax gross, you're going to be earning around £17,000 a year. And the UK average income right now is £29,000. So obviously you're earning a bit below the average. But the minimum or national minimum wage, federal minimum wage in the US is a blanket policy. And the reason this can be a bit problematic is I'll get onto that in a second. So essentially, I picked a few of the most expensive cities in the UK to live in and the least expensive cities in the UK to live in. Right, so one of the least expensive cities in the UK to live in is Kingston upon Hull. It's CPI, so that's the Consumer Price Index. Essentially, an index of 100 is the most average city in the UK in terms of whatever. So in this case, consumer prices, meaning that a CPI of 71 is essentially a 29% discount in this city for the cost of living in comparison to the most average city in the UK. Right, so what does that mean? It obviously means that the cost of living in Kingston upon Hull, I don't know where that is. You probably don't know where that is, but that's not the point. The costs are much lower. The average income in Kingston is £24,000. So if the UK minimum wage is just over £8 and it gets increased to like £9, with that sum gross, the dual pre-tax, you'll be earning a decent wage in respect to the area that you live in. You might have some disposable income. You'll be living, I don't want to say lavishly, but you'll be able to get by definitely. And the average house price here is £104,000. It's just use a tool for comparison between this as well. Right, so it shows you that each pound in this area actually goes quite far in comparison to the other cities, such that the minimum wage is quite satisfactory in this area. Right, Belfast, CPI of 82, 18% discount. I said 29 earlier, so here it's 18% discount, and the average income is £24,500. Again, as you can see, the bare minimum you can be making £17,000 a year if you're working full-time on a minimum wage, is £17,000. So obviously, you're not too far off the average wage or average, annual earnings. House price is 160,000, obviously a bit more. But also the deposits in these areas, the deposit for houses, because not many people buy houses in cash, especially in the UK. They've got a lot of programs which enable people to much easier buy homes and take even shared ownership in this. So the deposits here are obviously much lower. So £17,000 annual kind of earnings can go a long way here. Sheffield 83, £22,500, even lower, so it's even closer to the minimum earnings that you can make, £185,000 for house prices. Let's now compare this to the most expensive cities. Cambridge, one of the most expensive, CPI of 120, £36,000 nearly of annual average earnings, and the house prices of over 400,000. Now, this is where it takes a kind of 180-degree turn. Your 17,000 minimum earnings is not going to get you, a nice lifestyle here in Cambridge. It's very minimal. You probably won't have much disposable income at all. Maybe you'll be able to get by. Maybe. Oxford 126, 34,000 income average, and £500,000 Great British pounds average house price. And London 168, income of just under 40,000, house prices of around the same. So what does this mean? It means that for the, let's say, £71 dinner outing that you had in Kingston upon Hull is going to cost you 168, more than double here in London, right? So now this blanket minimum wage, which is meant to cover everyone, is actually doing you no good here in London. You probably won't be able to live off of minimum wage here in London without, sharing apartments or sharing a lot of kind of things that you need to use and just getting yourself the basic necessities. Right, so a great metaphor for this essentially is a half-kilo steak. Let's say you're all sitting at a table, you and your family, and everyone gets given a half-kilo steak on the table. Now, I'm a big guy. I can quite happily eat the half-kilo steak. I'll probably be still hungry. I want to eat more. I want more steak. My mum, for example, on the other hand, she'll have, there's going to be plenty of steak for her. She won't have a problem, being full on that steak. It'll probably even be a bit too much for her. It's the same principle with this kind of minimum wage and a high minimum wage, really, where when you increase it, not from the level it is now, it's all about the increase in minimum wage, the $15 in the US and whatever, £9-10 here in the UK, whatever the politicians suggest this week. It shows you that, it's a great metaphor because this steak is going to be a lot here in these cities, the least expensive ones, where it's cheaper to live than it is here in the most expensive cities. So that's kind of the problem with kind of having like a blanket minimum wage, where it's not serving justice equally amongst different cities. So maybe a place like the US, for example, is a good example. They have a federal minimum wage where it's a very blanketed kind of policy, but each state will have its own minimum wage to it, where it adjusts to its kind of local costs of living. But yeah, that's just a theory. That's, again, no opinion. These are all very freely available statistics and data. This is just how it is, right? My point is just to bring this up and really kind of show how a blanket minimum wage serves it serves the average city, and that's it, quite literally. Right, let's get on to the economic theory. Just quickly, it's some very basic high school stuff, high school economics. So essentially, you've got a supply and demand diagram right here. wherein it shows you the supply of labor and the demand for labor. And essentially, a market equilibrium in a very free market, the market's going to dictate a wage of wage one. So, £10 per hour, £5 per hour, whatever that might be, and a total labor supply of L1. When you have a national minimum wage, since it's a price floor, it's going to be above the equilibrium. So the problem with that is that the consequence of that actually is the fact that obviously you have a higher wage for those that keep their job, but it creates unemployment since at a higher price, whether it's when it's higher than the market equilibrium. A lot of people are going to be willing to supply their labor because obviously they're going to be earning more at that wage, but less businesses, there's going to be less jobs given out to people because the same business can't have 10 jobs at $5 per hour, but then also 10 jobs at $10 an hour. It's going to double their cost. That's not very business minded. It's not a great economic transaction. So that's what happens. It leads to unemployment. Since there's more labor supplied, quantity of labor supplied, than there is quantity of labor demanded. That's certainly a problem. It leads to unemployment. So obviously, it's great for those that keep their jobs. They're earning more, but it's not so great for those that actually lose their jobs in the process. Right, now we can get on to the next point, and it's the idea of Amazon, Costco, for example, very big businesses versus your local SMEs. So small and medium enterprises, such as your local butcher, Bob's Butcher, and your local convenience store, which sells just regular stuff that you can also buy on Amazon and it gets delivered to your home. Right, so what's my point here? Imagine yourself a convenience store which every summer hires about 4, students or teenagers just looking to earn some extra pocket money, pay off their debts, or put towards a college tuition, university tuition, and all of a sudden by the next summer, your minimum wage goes from $8.21, which they're currently getting paid for because they're students or teenagers, to let's say £10. Now all of a sudden, that's a great cost to the business, to the convenience store. So owner Jess, she's 28. All of a sudden, she's thinking, okay, I simply can't have 4 teenagers working in my shop. It sucks, but the cost is too high. So this time I'm only going to hire 2. Well, that means 2 kids, or there's 2 less jobs for kids, 2 less opportunities for kids, teenagers, students to gain experience, gain pocket money, all that kind of stuff. Same with the local butcher. Let's say, these small businesses are only making, 5, 10, 20,000 pounds per annum on profits. So they're obviously not great, massive enterprises where, the owner's balling. It's just a small local business where, they're able to get by with the business. So let's say the local butcher, he can't chop all the meat and prep everything by himself. He's got a few friends with him, a few local teenagers to help him stack the shelves and do all kinds of stuff. Now all of a sudden, the wage that he has to legally pay them goes up by a few pounds. He's not able to afford the labor. So what does he do? He has to shut down because he simply can't operate by himself, and he obviously can't legally pay below the minimum wage. Amazon and Costco and businesses on the other side of the kind of spectrum, they're massive, very highly profitable businesses. They can take on the cost of a higher wage. Jeff Bezos is sitting in his office. He's got shops and he's got services worldwide. A small minimum wage increase to him is a big minimum wage increase to the convenience store and local butcher. He can take on the cost. He can just up the prices on the other side. The local butcher, convenience store, it's much harder for them to do that. So these lot get pushed out of the business. Amazon, Costco pick up the different consumers, and you basically increase their size and the market kind of power since there's less competition. So it's not great for the opportunities of the teenagers, and obviously it's not too great for business looking at big versus small businesses. It creates higher inequality because the small businesses, it comes down to their inability to compete on this basis. Right. Second of all, that was from the supply side. Now from the kind of demand side, from the consumer side, it's a very kind of simple equation that I've put here. It's a path of how this is going to impact the kind of price that people have to pay. So, first of all, everyone earns more income. There's more people on a higher wage. There's higher demand. They're obviously earning, let's say, £200 more per week. And obviously their expenditures go up £200 more per week. But the price increases as well. Because let's say if you're a shop owner, if you own a little butcher shop, all of a sudden a lot of people are coming to your shop and buying more goods, and all of a sudden your inventory is going down. You've got less stock in your shop. You have to increase the prices before more goods come, and you can supply more in general because it's essentially your prices go up, and for the people that have been now earning more, supposedly, they're also spending more, but on the same amount of goods. So even though your nominal kind of income's gone up, you're earning whatever amount more per week, month, year, you're spending more on the same stuff. You're no more richer than you were before the minimum wage increase. Right, so this is essentially called inflation. Inflation is a general increase in prices, and it erodes your wealth. It erodes the purchasing power of unit currency. I've said this before. Essentially, even though you're earning more, you have to spend more on the same amount of goods. So from a business side, a higher minimum wage isn't always great. From the consumer side as well, because especially if we're talking about national minimum wage, and on the levels that it might be in the US, they're looking at $15 per hour. This is going to take a serious toll on them. Essentially, there was a case. The city of Seattle actually increased 4 years ago. They increased their minimum wage to $15 an hour, and because of that, it's been 4 years. You can actually see the effects of this now. Job growth has stalled. In fact, I think it started to fall again. So this isn't good for jobs. This backs up my point of kind of less opportunities, that kind of stuff. Inflation, I'm not exactly sure, but again, I can imagine that it did take a toll. Less jobs. There's obviously higher prices because everyone's all of a sudden earning more. Well, if everyone's earning $15 an hour, or if everyone's earning a few dollars more, no one really is. Like I said, if everyone's earning £200 more per week, no one is. That's inflation. This is very simple. This isn't. I wouldn't even call this economics. This is quite simply common sense. But a lot of people aren't aware. Especially in Poland here, there's a lot of policies that have started giving out money quite literally. There's a policy which gives a certain amount of money per month per child, and a lot of people have been taking advantage of that. But the problem is, if everyone's getting money, whether it is for government handouts or everyone's wage increased, no one really is, because the shops increase their prices. It's there's no difference. It's quite simple. And since I'm a student, I want to talk about this from our point of view, from the point of students, teenagers, and why it is really bad for us. So, bad for us for the ones who are on this side of the kind of diagram, because for those who stay in jobs and have higher wages, I mean that's good as long as the prices don't get too high. But for us to lose their jobs, that's kind of where the problem comes into play. So, the point that I want to start off with is that your wage is determined by your value. How skilled you are, what's your experience, what can you bring to the shop, how quickly can you stack the shelves, how good are you at doing the books in the business, whatever. Students, teenagers, we're often inexperienced, unskilled, and so our value is not worth $15 per hour. This is a big problem, because if you're not worth, or if you're meant to be getting paid what you're not worth, you're not going to be getting paid. You're not going to find a job. Because if you own a butcher shop and you have to pay $15 per hour regardless, you're going to get someone skilled, not a teenager, obviously. So what does this lead to? Less opportunities. I'll put an exclamation mark here, because that's the real killer. This is the biggest problem. It's about the opportunities. Like I gave the example of the convenience store with, from going like 4 students or 4 teenagers being hired at the shop to now 2. That's 2 kids that are going to be sitting at home throughout the summer, not doing anything, just, I don't want to say wasting their life away, but there's an opportunity cost of them having, the skills and internships and experiences that they would have had if the minimum wage didn't go up. And I mean, this is true, like I said, with the job growth stall in Seattle, for the past few years, it really comes into play. Right, so less opportunities. Like I've actually got some internships here in Poland this summer, and I'm getting paid basically the minimum wage, or very near the minimum wage, even in big companies. They're big auditing companies. But the point is, if by next summer my wage, I'm thinking about it now, if it goes up from what it is now to 10% more, the company might feel like, instead of taking 20 interns this year, like we did last year, this year we're only going to take in 15, because it's just too costly for us. And in the end, they're not bringing us a crazy amount of value. Like, yeah, they're helping us with documentation, doc prep, translation, whatever the hell you might be doing in these big companies. It's just not worth it for us. So what do? They take in less interns. So instead of going to an internship and working and gaining experience, pocketing some money, I do nothing. It's a big problem, It's really that simple. Third point, entitlement. So a lot of people like to take the piss out of millennials and us Gen Zers about being entitled, all about instant gratification. And what a high minimum wage does, like the $15 per hour, like £10 per hour, it's essentially what it does. It tells the Democrats, or the Democratic leaders, like I said before, Bernie Sanders was $15 per hour minimum wage. A lot of these politicians just say how much you should be earning, but people don't deserve anything. Your wage is your value, and if they just say you're worth $15 per hour, that doesn't mean you are actually worth that much. So it creates a sense of entitlement. And let's say if you've got like a shop with a 28-year-old who's been working there for a few years, and she's stacking the shelves, she's earning $15 per hour, she does the books very well. All of a sudden the minimum wage goes up to $15. A teenager comes on for the summer, and they're also getting $15 per hour, the same as a woman who's been working there for a few years, and they think they're worth $15 per hour, they're entitled, whatever. The other woman's going to be like, wait, hold on, I've been working here for so long, they know nothing, I know a lot more than they do in a better business, please pay me more, otherwise I'm going to find a different job elsewhere. So that's a problem. It may demotivate some people and cause entitlement in some others. Obviously, that's definitely not great. And the fourth point is youth unemployment. That leads to less opportunities, that kind of stuff. That's a big problem. If you look at many countries, their youth unemployment is very, very often, if not always, higher, a lot higher than the national unemployment. In the US, I believe the national unemployment level is 3.8% at the moment, and last time I checked, the youth unemployment is at least twice as high. Maybe it was somewhere around 8%. I don't remember specifically. But the point is that as a business, if you're going to have to pay $15 per hour for someone to do, the shelves, the books, whatever, you're going to choose someone more experienced. You're going to choose someone more senior, because that's just how it is. As a teenager, as a student, you're not worth $15 per hour. You're not going to get given that amount. So, that's really what it comes down to. This is kind of the fallacy. The minimum wage is meant to, a higher minimum wage. Are you going to be earning more? I don't know. It depends if you keep your job or not. Nominally, maybe if you keep your job. In real terms, if inflation doesn't occur, which erodes away your real earnings, then you're basically in a no better position than you started off with. And especially for students, we're unskilled, inexperienced. On a general level, that's true. And what it comes down to is, the kind of election sausage, and it's the idea of, if a politician throws something at you, he throws you the election sausage, it's important not to take a bite of it. Hey guys, so just to summarize this whole video, the fallacy behind the minimum wage is the fact that politicians promise you're going to be earning more and everyone's going to be happy and wealthy, but in reality that's simply not the case, because first of all, the minimum wage serves no justice equally across the country, because as we saw, costs of living vary a lot, even in a country like the UK, and obviously it will be the same in the US and Poland and whatnot. But also it's the fact that if everyone's earning more, no one truly is. Prices catch on, there's inflation because of the rise in prices, and it really hurts the small to medium enterprises, your local butcher, your convenience store, and helps out Amazon and Costco, and obviously that leads to more monopoly power for them and more potential for them to actually abuse these powers. But really, from my point of view especially, it really hurts us students and teenagers who want to get jobs, who want to get experience and increase their skill, and it's not always about the money, but it leads to higher youth unemployment and less opportunities for us. So in reality, when a politician tells you that you're going to be getting whatever wage, you want to ask yourself, okay, how'd you get that number? Second of all, how are you going to make sure that this real income actually stays with me and it doesn't, go into the pockets of big companies like Amazon or whatever, and it doesn't damage any small business activity, any local business activity. So that's really the summary of this kind of fallacy that I've thought of. And yeah. So yeah, essentially I hope this has given you a different kind of point of view on this whole situation, especially from a student like myself. I'm 20 years old, so I was just a teenager. I was in this whole situation myself, and it's important to look at these situations, whatever you see on the TV, whatever you see the politicians are saying, you need to take it with a grain of salt just to really understand what's going on. And again, ask yourself the questions that I've thought of earlier. Thank you.